This is a Bloody Vegans production.
So I was brought up a vegetarian. All my family were vegetarian growing up. We didn't eat meat. We had loads of rescue animals, from geese to horses, guinea pigs, everything in between. And we just always referred to ourselves as a family full of animal lovers. So in like the 80s and the 90s, I don't think I'd ever even heard the term being vegan, but you could be veggie or vegetarian. So we were all vegetarian. And that's just all I ever knew. I don't really have any recollections of eating meat. I have some recollections of going to kids' parties and people rolling their eyes and being like, oh, what are we going to feed you? But I've never known any difference. So, lifelong vegetarian. And I guess I only started questioning it around about 5 or 6 years ago, because being vegetarian up until then kind of always felt enough. So, yeah, I'm quite proud really to say that I'm from a lifelong family of people that don't eat meat.
Yeah, well, fair play to you. Fair play. You mentioned that the school parties and so on. It's kind of interesting to me. Like, so back in the 80s and 90s, I was of a similar era. It was, but not vegetarian, I must say, growing up. Did you find that you mentioned that kids would question it a little bit? That back then, even just being vegetarian was kind of like marked out as different.
Yeah, it was difficult, but I didn't really find that the children were the problem. I always remember it was children's parents. So I
Yeah.
still have this one really clear recollection, and I won't mention any names, but I remember being at a girl in my class's birthday party, and literally this mum there saying, oh, like vegetarian, what are we going to feed you? And looking at all these like ham sandwiches and sausage rolls. And I vaguely remember just eating like bread and butter because there was nothing else that I could
Right.
eat. So I don't ever remember kids being unkind. I remember it more being the parents.
Yeah. Yes, it's interesting actually. I think that's probably the case for many vegans now. Actually, it's not the kids are pretty open, especially when they're quite young. But the parents is it's often the challenge. I'm finding that
I,
myself anyway, as a dad of a 3.5-year-old.
yeah, I think children are all born with compassion, so they kind of just,
Yeah,
I don't know, I don't really feel like there's no stigma with them. If you say I don't eat meat because I love animals, I think they just accept it. Whereas I think it's grown-ups and they're a little bit more cynical, aren't they, or a little bit more negative about anything that doesn't fit in with their ideas of what is normal, or within their world. So if they don't know
yeah,
about it or they don't think about it, then I don't know. People can be a little bit negative, can't they?
absolutely, yeah. What got you? So what got you questioning then? Sort of 6 years ago.
Um, I at that point I was vegetarian, and I would still buy leather shoes. I would have leather bags. I didn't really think further than not eating meat. And I still remember now, my friend Julia was tattooing me, and she'd recently gone vegan, and we were talking about good vibes and karma and doing the right thing. And she just said, I've recently gone vegan, and she referred to it, and I still remember the term she used, like enlightenment. She said, I feel like I've gone through this period of spiritual enlightenment, and it's partly come from doing the right thing and becoming vegan. And it really like sat with me. And it was December. I remember it was December, and I thought about it for about 2 weeks. And she said, oh, I watched Earthlings, go and watch Earthlings. And I thought, yeah, yeah,
Huh,
I
yeah.
will. And it must have been about 2 weeks later, I was on my break in work, and I thought, do you know what? I'll Google Earthlings. And all that came up was the trailer, and it was about 2 minutes long. And I remember literally sitting there with my phone, like, oh my God. And then tears like streaming down my face. And I thought, what even is this? Like, it sounds so naive as a grown woman to not have any idea about eggs and dairy. I already knew about kind of animal testing. That was something that was on my radar, and circuses and zoos. So I never would have gone to those, but I still remember it was eggs and it was dairy. And I watched that, and I felt sick to the pit of my stomach. I felt
Mm.
terrible because I genuinely had no idea. And I literally just said at that point, I was like, I'm vegan now. And I had no idea what I was doing. I literally didn't have a clue. And I think I Googled going vegan and Veganuary came up. So I like quickly put my email address in and I was like, right, that's it, I'm vegan. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But it's just something, a switch went in my brain and I thought, that is it. There's no going back. There's no half measures of being vegetarian anymore. I've got to do this. So it was quite quick for me. You know, there was no transitional period. There was no eating everything in my fridge before I made the change. There was no setting a date. It was literally there and then.
What was that feeling? You know, you said that sickness in the pit of your stomach. Was it a kind of a deception almost? Like I thought that I was doing everything I needed to do. Like where did that come from?
Yeah, I think I was embarrassed, genuinely, as an animal
Right.
lover who's been
Yeah.
around animals my whole life. I mean, we had horses growing up and we used to keep them on a pig farm. And I still remember the noises on certain days, you know, when they would come and they would take the pigs off for slaughter as a really young child. So I kind of understood meat, but I don't think I understood. I feel like there's this big myth, isn't there? There's this big cover up about how chickens are going to lay eggs whether we eat them or not, and if we don't, they'll go to waste. And cows are going to have milk whether we drink it or not. And you know, I've even heard a few adults say to children, "Well, cows are going to explode if we don't drink their milk." And I'd never ever connected the dots that cows make milk because they're mothers, not because they're cows. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
all these little things slotted into place. And I felt really embarrassed because I think I'm quite open-minded and quite smart. And all of a sudden, I thought, how on earth have I been duped for this long in my life? And I felt foolish, felt embarrassed.
Do you think that it's interesting you use that word, and I totally relate actually that feeling of embarrassment. You know, for me, I came at it from an environmental standpoint first, and then the sort of the animal welfare came later. You know, people come in from different angles, as they say. You know, you come for the environment, come for the health, and stay for the animals. And you know, for me, it was environmental, and I remember having the same feeling of I thought I was doing my bit. I thought I was recycling. I thought I was doing this, that, and the other, and that embarrassment was definitely very real. Do you think that almost if people could, you know, if there was an openness to that feeling that it's okay to feel embarrassed, if perhaps we in the quote unquote vegan community were perhaps you know, sharing those stories, putting our finger on it and saying, yeah, we were embarrassed too, or we felt like this, it would bring more people in. So I wonder if people, when they feel that embarrassment, you've got two choices, haven't you? You can kind of like be humble and open and go, do you know what, I was wrong, or you can double down.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with me, I'm very transparent with it because I understand that so many people have come to me talking about veganism, and there are quite a lot of people out there who will say, "Oh no, you know, they will paint this picture of themselves that they're perfect." And I think that's a big barrier to veganism because people think if I'm not 100% vegan and I'm not perfect, well, therefore I can't do it, you know. And I think acknowledging the difficulties and the slip ups and the challenges that you will face, but being open to it and almost embracing it. And I'm almost quite proud of my horror and my embarrassment. And because, you know, I'll have
Yeah.
that, I'll wear that because they're normal feelings, aren't they? And I went around for years saying, when people said, "Why are you vegetarian?" I was like, "Oh, because I'm such an animal lover." And then I think, actually,
Yeah.
I loved pets. That's what I was really saying is I loved the animals that I shared my home with, whereas the other animals that I might not see every day, so cows and sheep and chickens, what I was really saying is, you know, I almost disregarded them as being worthy of my love. Whereas now I'm very clear that, you know, I am an animal lover and I care for animals, not just pets. And I think that's the difference. But yeah, I'm at peace now with my embarrassment because I feel like I've come such a long way on my vegan journey since then.
Yeah. Do you think having that experience and that viewpoint has made you subsequently, since becoming vegan and making that transition, has it made you think differently? Maybe approach people who aren't yet vegan, haven't yet made the transition, differently. Because I asked a question because, you know, that feeling is not uncommon, is it? The idea of, you know, especially in the UK, we consider ourselves this nation of animal lovers. Has it made you perhaps approach it slightly differently? Because I think some people, and I probably count myself in this actually, when I went through it, probably became a little bit sort of militant, almost a little bit aggressive at the beginning, because I felt like, well, everyone should know this now. And once you know the facts,
You want to
I'll
share
tell you
it.
the facts.
Yeah, you want everyone
Once you
to know.
compute them, yeah, as soon as I've told you the facts, now you need to switch too, as if like that is that easily done. But your experience is interesting. Has it made you perhaps approach with a slightly different, perhaps a softer edge?
It has now, but like you, at first I was angry and I went through this angry vegan stage and I was like, oh my goodness, I've seen the light. I've had this awakening. I didn't know, and I wanted to tell everyone. And I think I scared people off because all of a sudden I was this preachy, judgmental, angry vegan who wanted everybody to change overnight. And, you know, my family and my friends, and I almost wanted to cut people off, you know, if they weren't open to it. And that probably lasted about
Yeah.
6 months, you know, and I would share this horrific slaughterhouse footage because I'd seen it, so I'd watched it, so everybody needed to see it. And then gradually over the last 5 years, I've softened, and I've kind of learned really that there's so many different approaches to getting people on board, and it isn't always shock tactics. And more often than not, it's the kindness that gets people in. So for a while, my husband and I ran a vegan activism chapter in Liverpool, and at first I was really passionate, and I think I did scare people off, and I think people thought, oh my goodness, this is like all or nothing, and I'm going to go vegan, and all of a sudden I've got to be out on the streets and I've got to be converting people, and if I'm not that, I can't be vegan. Whereas now I think I've mellowed with it a little bit, and I've got this much softer approach where I am kinder, and I will say to people, I know it's hard, try this vegan cake, or come round to mine and let me cook you vegan dinner. And you know, there's different inroads that are a much gentler, less judgmental approach, but it's taken me a long time to get here.
Do you sometimes, this might just be me, I sometimes, because I've been through pretty much carbon copy, sounds like, the initial kind of like quite aggressive phase, and then sort of figuring out there's different ways to approach this, and often my messaging wasn't landing, so you know, how could I make it land? And I sometimes though now reflect and wonder, am I a little too soft sometimes? Do I not, you know, do I shy away from it? Do you ever feel that? Is that just me?
No, I do, and sometimes I question not my veganism, but I question, am I working my vegan magic on people the way that I used to? Because it was easy before, because I would have people reaching out on social media saying, you spoke to me in Liverpool 6 months ago and I've been vegan since then. But trying this softer approach, I think, do I look like I'm not as passionate, or I don't care as much? And that's something as well that I've struggled with. But what I've realised is I am more approachable. More people are coming to me and asking for my advice because I come across as being a kinder, softer person. And I'm going to say that I think my results are as good, and people that previously would have never considered veganism are now more open to it because my approach is much more laid back. But I have done that, and I have questioned, if I'm not shouting it from the rooftops, am I as passionate as what I was? But it's just a different approach, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there are loads of different ways, and I'm glad that people still do shout from the rooftops. I guess I kind of am in a sort of way. There's a podcast that's out there, but it's even then it's a relatively conversational approach for the reason that I want, you know, I want people to see that vegans are pretty reasonable folks who are trying to go about doing the right thing and trying to cause as little harm as possible, you know. But yeah, I do question myself sometimes. Think, could I do more? Could I be louder? Do I need to? Sometimes do people just need that shock, you know? So it's interesting to hear you're still in that space sometimes too. I'd love to turn to Veganuary if that's all right, because it was
of course, yeah.
Obviously it was it was a jump off point for you. It sounds like you were pretty kind of committed going into it. I think for many people, they probably go into Veganuary with a much more, let's try it for a month and see how we go. You'd obviously had this longer history of being a big supporter of animal welfare and so on and so forth, and just having this epiphany that veganism was a step further than you perhaps been before. But it'd be good to understand, like, why did you particularly, considering you were quite made up, why did you particularly get on board with Veganuary, and what kind of benefits do you think it's had for you in that initial month?
I think initially for me, I only knew one vegan person. So I was a little bit like, who do I go to for advice? And I thought, my friend's going to be sick of me if I'm constantly messaging her saying, what what do I do with this? Like, I want to make a birthday cake. What do I use? So my initial thought was, I need some vegan friends. And even if they were just via Facebook or via social media or like a support. So that was my first thing. Then there was the recipes, obviously, and helped. And I think it was that sense of being accountable. So whilst I was very sure I was going to do it, I thought I'm one of these people where if I sign up and I get an email every day, it's something keeping me on track and it's something reminding me every day. So I don't know how I would have fared if I'd have gone it on my own, but I am so passionate about Veganuary, and the support I've had since then and the community and the people that I've met through Veganuary it's been amazing, and they are my go-to all year round. So I think people think obviously about Veganuary, you only do it in January, but I send people to Veganuary in the middle of summer and I say, you can sign up whenever you want. And I think that's something that people don't realize. I think they have to wait until the 1st of January. And, I don't think they realize that, they can help them all year round. So I think it was that little sense of community really, and having some friends, some vegan friends, even if they weren't in real life,
Yeah,
to support me.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I definitely relate. I went through a couple of years of not having any vegan contacts at all. So I kind of wish I'd started through that route. I didn't, but I kind of wish I did now. It's this community. I'd love to get your view on something, because I've had this conversation a couple of times with some folks who are kind of quite deep in the sort of quote unquote vegan community about Veganuary, and there's almost a bit of a, I don't want to say a backlash, but there's some concerns, I think, within the vegan community at the moment of the kind of idea, the premise of it, as great as it is being co-opted by kind of big companies looking to cash in for the month and so on and so forth. I'd love to get your perspective on that, and whether you think actually we need to kind of as a community move past that a little bit and make sure that we are still advocating for it, because it is this great jump off point.
So I think that goes a little bit back to what we were saying before about, you will know yourself in the vegan community. There's almost this hierarchy, and being vegan level 100 is like this perfect vegan who is out on the streets every day, and you are, doing activism, and you only support small, local, fully vegan businesses. And then somewhere a little bit lower down that pecking order is a day-to-day normal vegan who's trying to do their bit, who can't commit to that full-on 100% vegan activism lifestyle. And I know I've had a few people say this to me when I was doing outreach in Liverpool, where they would say, we can't advocate for anything less than 100% perfect vegan from the get-go. No baby steps, no vegetarian first, no trying it for a month, no meat-free days. That's all out. And I understand why people say that, because once you see the light, why would you want to dip a toe in? But now I think it's come with this mellowing as I get a little bit older. Now I do think, well, actually, if people are trying vegan options and they're telling their friends and family and they're purchasing those in the supermarket, is that better than nothing? Because there are some people that will never make that jump, but they may go 50%. Well, would we rather have 50% or nothing at all? So I think as I've mellowed, as I've got older, I think, it isn't ideal somebody walking into Burger King and buying a vegan burger. But is that better than going in and buying a normal burger? Well, yeah, I'm going to say it is. So I think I've only seen that viewpoint as I've softened, as I've got older. And veganism is big now, and it is a big registered charity, and it does have a lot of followers and a lot of supporters. And people will always find the negative in everything, won't they? So they will say, well, someone's going to be making money off the back of that. But we have to get real in that the society that we live in, cash is king and money rules, doesn't it? And not very many people do things for nothing. So there has to be incentives for these companies to branch out and make vegan products. And personally, for me, I think about 5 years ago when I went vegan, how much easier my life is now because of these companies that have created all these new vegan products. You know, I can walk into Tesco and buy a vegan birthday cake off the shelf. I don't have to order one via a vegan baker and drive an hour to go and pick it up. I can walk in and buy one. So for that, I'm grateful. So I say this all the time about animal welfare. This path to this perfect vegan world isn't linear, is it? There's going to be some bumps in the road, and it might not always be perfect, but I'm all for it. If people are trying veganism, then I'm going to applaud them for that, because it isn't easy, is it, always?
No, absolutely. And I love that point about the path not being linear. I think and it's just triggered a thought in me, actually, that I still feel it's kind of good for people to question. I'm glad that there is argument and debate and there's questioning. But I'm also kind of fall on your side of the fence insofar as I think, you know, if what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to make an exclusive club, or are we trying to bring people along a journey and recognise that sometimes these journeys take a little while and it's not all overnight? You know, for you it was overnight once you'd watched Earthlings. For me it was overnight once I watched Cowspiracy. But the amount of people I've spoken to whose journey is more like, you know, 5, 6, 7+ years, you know, and that it was, and even actually hours, as much as I say we watch this or we watch that, looking back, there's probably some dots we can join to, you know, you've been vegetarian a long time and so on and so forth. Everybody's journey's long, really, even if the final decision is quick. So yeah, I think you make a really valid point there. But I still kind of think there's value in friction in a way, as long as we don't kind of cut each other off with it. You know?
Yeah. Well, it keeps people talking and debating it, doesn't it? And like you say, as long as it doesn't go too far and we don't fall out over it, it's good to have healthy debate, doesn't it, about the pros and cons. And of course, if I had a choice, if I was on a high street and I was going to buy from an independent vegan place, of course I would. But it isn't always that simple, is it? You know, so I think it's more about, in the situation that you're in at that time, do you make the most conscious decision in that scenario? So if you've got a choice, do you make the best choice? So for me, it's about that. It's just about conscious thought, isn't it, into what you're doing?
Absolutely. And I think there's affordability in there as well. You know, one of the big things that people will throw up as an issue is affordability. And, you know, whichever way you cut it, if you're, you know, sometimes if you're sourcing the perfect kind of vegan ingredient from somewhere, or, you know, vegan dish or whatever, or vegan product, sometimes there's a premium that comes with that, out of the fact that you're supporting a local business and all the rest of it. I'd hate for somebody to be completely turned off it because they think, well, I can't afford that, you know, that, so therefore all veganism is out because it's either perfect or nothing. I think you make a valid point. If Tesco's is your option, as much as, you know, I might not want to support Tesco, if that's my option and that's what I can afford and I've got a family to feed, I'd rather they were doing that and it was vegan, you know.
Of course. And it's just about doing the best that you can with what you've got, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, you summed it up nicely. That's exactly it. Doing the best that you can. Can we talk about your activism? Because you mentioned about street outreach. You know, you're very busy right now in a kind of a different form of activism, which it would be great to sort of talk about where that's come from now. But I'd love to hear your kind of journey from, you know, from turning vegan to actually wanting to do more out, you know, whether it be outreach, whether it be supporting, you know, dogs as you are now, you know, in the way that we are. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey in that world.
Yeah. So when I initially went vegan, again, I think it's not a shock to the system, but there was obviously this period of change, and I thought, right, that's it, you know, I'm vegan, I'm doing enough. And then probably about 6 months in, of people not really listening to me and me sharing footage on Facebook and nobody commenting on it, and thinking, you know, losing friends left, right, and centre because I shared some footage from inside a slaughterhouse or something. I thought, well, how can I talk to people about being vegan? And I saw something come up again on Facebook about an activism group in Liverpool, and I still remember the day. I jumped on a train on my own. It was a weekday. I literally walked over to this group of strangers and I was like, "Hi, and I'm vegan and I'm like here to join you." And I was part of that chapter for I think about 18 months. So I started out just as a volunteer. Then, when different people were leaving the chapter, I took on with the running of it. And the only reason that ultimately that chapter closed was because of COVID. So a lot of things were changing, and obviously there was lockdowns and restrictions in place, so we couldn't do it. But I literally went from zero to hero. I was this vegetarian, then I was vegan, then all of a sudden I found myself running this activism, a street activism group, and I loved it while I was doing it. I absolutely loved it. And people would come back to me and they would say, "Do you remember you spoke to me? And I've not eaten meat in X amount of weeks," or you know, or people would, like I say, reach out on social media and say, "Thank you so much for speaking to me," and I really, really loved it. And I think the only reason that my activism in that way has stopped is once COVID start, I set up my own not-for-profit dog rescue from home, and that went from having, I think I had 12 dogs in the house at the time, and now I've got 26. So, again, sometimes I feel guilty and I think, am I not spreading the vegan message? But my activism has taken a different route in that I take in dogs that have got major behavioural issues, so would have actually got as far as being at the vets to be put to sleep because they have bitten or they don't get along with the family or they can't be rehomed. I take in ex-breeding dogs. So how I liken it is that, a few people have been a bit funny saying, well, why do you work with dog breeders or why would you take in ex-breeding dogs? You're almost supporting that industry. But I liken it to veganism. If I was taking in ex-battery hens or, retiring cows from the dairy industry, am I supporting that industry or am I kind of mopping up the mess afterwards? So, yeah, I'm absolutely snowed under at the minute I think I've had just me from home and my family. We've had 45 dogs through the doors this year. We have rehomed the majority. We've still
Wow.
got some with us long term. We fund the vet's bills. We retrain. We rehome if we can. And we just love them all. And they're all in the house with me. And it's absolute chaos.
Had you had much experience in that kind of world before? Because that sounds incredibly daunting. I'd love to, I'd love to do something like that, but it also sounds incredibly, like I say, daunting to figure out, like, how to do it and so on. Like, where did you start with that?
So I was brought up loads of rescue animals. So I laugh about it now, but my mum and dad actually got divorced because my dad said to my mum when I was a teenager, "If you bring any more dogs home, that's it, I'm leaving." And my mum did. And I think at the point I'm laughing now, but my mum, it is like a standing joke in the family. So we had rescue horses that had previously were going to go to slaughter. We'd got a goose with one eye. We'd got battery hens. We'd got rabbits from pet shops that couldn't be sold because they were ill. So we'd always had loads of rescue animals. And my mum had 12 dogs at the time when at the start of lockdown. And I think we'd got 12 or 13 of our own. And locally, people just kind of knew that if they'd got a difficult dog, they could kind of leave it with us and we would fix it, whether it was vet's bills. And it was only when I thought, hang on, we're spending all our savings here and we are finding homes for these dogs, but we're not really getting anything back, that it was my husband that said, we should get a social media page and just see if anybody wants to donate to vet's bills. So that's how it started, really. I set up a Facebook and an Instagram and a website. And then the next thing, the donations come in and then the dogs come in. And it was gone from just taking in ex-breeding dogs to now I've taken dogs from Manchester, from London, from the Midlands. I've rehomed as far as London.
Wow.
And it is just, don't get me wrong, like most people who find themselves in rescue, you wing it at first. So I
Yeah.
didn't really know what I was doing. I've made some mistakes, but I've kind of got a good little routine going now. And, I've got a good support network but it is still hard. Like, most nights I average 4 or 5 hours sleep because at the minute I've got puppies in that have been sick. So I've been feeding them, like through the night or late at night and early in the morning.
Yeah.
I've got dogs with me that have got like cancer that I won't rehome, they'll stay with us for life, and we'll look after them for life. I've got some dogs that have bitten a dozen people and were literally, the vets were ready to put them to sleep because they said that they would never ever be rehomed, and now they're loving life and living at mine. And I guess I think I'm just one of those people that's been brought up with animals. I kind of understand them. I'd like to think that I'm quite in tune with them, and people laugh and they say, "Oh, you're like a dog whisperer." I don't know if it's that. I think it's just having a little bit of compassion and being patient and calm and level-headed. But yeah, I'm still winging it. It's still early days. We've been set up now just over a year, but I've got a waiting list of dogs ready to come. So it's like a full-time job and a half, but I love it.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I'm almost reluctant to ask this question because I sort of fear what the answer might be. But lockdown. There was a big uptick in people getting lockdown dogs and so on. I saw so many friends of friends, social media posts, bits and pieces of people with getting a new companion for the home. Is there a sort of sad back end of that story insofar as, are you seeing a lot of dogs that need rehoming off the back of that, where people have perhaps taken on a new companion animal that they couldn't cope with?
Yeah, so I think what happened, like you're saying, with lockdown is everybody was at home, nobody could go on holiday, everyone was bored. I don't know why. It was doing your house up or buying a dog or both, and everybody seemed to be doing it, didn't they? Because I think everyone was bored. So at first I was thinking, we're going to get all the puppies through that people have got, and they're chewing the house up, or they can't, they're going back to work and they can't look after them. But what I've actually seen more of is the ex-breeding dogs who have been bred more than what they ordinarily would have done to cash in on this puppy boom. So I've got some French bulldogs at the minute who have had back-to-back litters of puppies, and they are exhausted, and they are now almost a waste product of the breeding industry, and people don't want them, unfortunately, because they are older. A lot of dogs, like the French bulldogs that have been so popular, they have to have cesarean births. So once they've had a few, they can't then give birth naturally anyway. And it's sad to say that if there's not an incentive for owning them, people don't want them. So at the minute, I've got 5 French bulldogs in my house, and I always said I didn't overly like them. I love all dogs, but I've got the breeds that I naturally warm to. And I've got 5 French bulldogs at the minute, and they're ready to leave, and I'm struggling to find homes for them because people don't want older dogs. They want the cute puppy that they've picked. But literally prices went from maybe £500 to £1,000 for a puppy to, I heard of people paying £5,000 during lockdown for a puppy that they never ever would have ordinarily paid for. So, and even normal people at home who would have never considered having a litter of puppies, they saw this, so they were mating and breeding their own family pets. So we've had quite a lot of dogs that have come that way, where people have had a litter of puppies at home and then couldn't cope with the puppies or couldn't sell them then because they've missed that window of opportunity for lockdown. So yeah, we've had puppies, I've had older dogs, I've got the dogs that have been bought in lockdown that people have bought that have got no experience of owning a dog, and they've bitten them, and they've loved them, but they've not been able to manage them. So yeah, we've got it from every angle. So we've got the cast-offs, we've got the puppies, and we've got the behavioural ones, and we've got a house full.
Wow, I hadn't really considered that, but it's completely logical when you say it like that. I think I was imagining people taking on puppies and then deciding actually this isn't for us. But you're absolutely right. It's an industry where these puppies are being bred, and there's a mother at the end who's suffered through that. So it's really, really kind of sad to hear.
But again,
really.
it's something that people don't consider, isn't it?
No, not at all. I must admit, and feel awful for not having considered it, but I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. Like I say, I'd only thought about the puppy that is no longer wanted and so on and that kind of thing, which I guess, like you said, would probably be relatively easier to rehome. For folks who and I'll include myself in this, I don't have a companion animal in the home at the moment. For folks who don't perhaps know how to go about making sure that they, get a new companion animal in the home in the right way and so on, what to look for? Where do you go? Where do you start?
It's hard because most people will pick a dog based on what aesthetically appeals to them. We're quite shallow, aren't we, as human beings? And which is why dogs like French bulldogs and flat-faced dogs, everybody loves them and they see them as a puppy. Oh, they're so cute. I think the biggest mistake that people make is picking a dog or any pet based on what it looks like rather than what they can offer. So even when we rehome dogs, we get a lot of people who message us and say, I want a Dachshund, I want a sausage dog because they're so cute. They don't research the breed and what they need and what they can offer, and they don't come to us and say, this is my lifestyle and this is what I've got, this is my home, this is my garden, this is how active I am, what dog would suit me. I think that's the first thing. It's being very honest about what you can offer, because some people don't want to get out of bed in the morning, and they want to have a lion at a weekend, or they work long shifts, or they have a lot of holidays, and it's some people come to us and say I want a dog, and they'll reel off their lifestyle, and I joke and say, okay, the breed of dog you want is a cat, because a dog isn't going to work for you. And I think people think I'm being mean, and I'm not, but I think people have good intentions, but they're not 100% honest. So I think that's the first thing, is to sit down as a family and be completely honest about how much work you want to put in, because we have a lot of small dogs, but small dogs obviously eat less, they need less exercise. If you're going to go out and get a big dog, the chances of things going wrong if you're not going to train that dog and exercise it appropriately are obviously much greater. And those dogs are harder to then rehome, because it's sad to say, if you've got a tiny little poodle, which I've got at the minute, and he's this big and he's bitten, he has come to me, but he's so much easier to handle and to deal with because he weighs 3 kilos. If he was a dog that weighed 60 kilos and he'd bitten, it's a whole different ball game. But any dog can be dangerous, can't it? It just depends on the handling and the homes. But I would say that's the first thing to do, is not be honest with what you've got to offer and how much work you want to put in. Be patient. Don't go out and buy the first dog you can just because you want a dog. And it would be to sign up and register with a lot of rescue organisations. So there's loads, contact them and be prepared to wait for the right dog, because anybody can go to a breeder and pay £2,000 and buy a dog. But if you want to do the right thing and you want to rehome one, you might have to wait a year for your ideal dog that matches your needs and your family and your lifestyle. So be honest and be patient with what you've got, and be prepared for a 15-year commitment.
Yeah. And in the meantime, whilst you're waiting, just support your local dog rescue.
Yeah. If you can't, we have loads of people saying, like, what can I do? Even if it's just sharing their posts on social media or liking the page, or, we did this Christmas, we asked people to donate an extra blanket if they were shopping in Tesco's, the little fleece blankets, or an extra pack of dog treats, anything like that. It's, a massive help. And if you need to get your fix of dogs, there's so many rescue organisations that are on social media, and you can go and you can scroll and you can see all these sweet little dogs that are being rehomed and, and are in the new lives. So many dogs now, when they are rehomed from us, they go on to have their own social media pages. And I love it, because I log in every day and I'm like, oh, there's one of my dogs at the beach today, and so you can get your fix in other ways. If you want to see pages and pages of cute dogs, you don't have to go out and buy one from a breeder. You can get your fix elsewhere, or come and volunteer and come and walk some of my dogs, because it's never ending.
Yeah, it sounds like you could do a little bit of a rest now and then. So
yeah, a holiday would be great, but there's no chance of that. Not for the
no, probably not. Maybe a couple of hours while someone walks a couple of your dogs.
That's as good as it gets. Or a very big camper van, and then they're all coming with me, and I'm not sure where we'd go, but it'd have to be somewhere remote on an island.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Can I ask about the local community that you've got around you? Because I'm always interested in where people are at in their communities, whether they've discovered a thriving vegan community or it's been a little bit harder to find. It sounds like you initially found one and actually ended up kind of leading one through the outreach programs and so on. And obviously you've made quite a name with the dog rescue now as well. But what's the community like locally, in terms of veganism? Is it quite a thriving one, or is it quite few and far between?
Where I live, so I'm about 40 minutes outside of Liverpool. It's a relatively small town, and the population is a lot older. So I always find that the older generation are the ones that are harder to draw in to talk about veganism. But where I'd say I've made my most vegan friends in Southport is we've got an amazing little vegan cafe. I'll say hi to the Megafauna in Southport if you follow them on social media. And I've made a lot of friends through them. When they've done events, we've been and so some of my friends have come from there. They've done Christmas dinners. We've got another vegan cafe that's just opened less than 6 months ago on the outskirts of Southport. I love going in there because everyone's vegan. That's Wild Root Cafe as well. Look at me name dropping all these people. Wild Root.
No, go for it.
And you get friendly with people, and then you follow them on social media, and they follow you. And I've gone from being Mrs. Little Legs, which is my rescue, to having a name. And we had Christmas dinner there, and we bought a cheese hamper for Christmas. And they then have people that work there that make jewelry, and you follow them. And social media is amazing now, isn't it? So I found that our little community has grown because you meet people and you find them on Instagram and you can follow them, and then everything falls into place, doesn't it? And you all click. So whilst we've only got a small vegan community, it's a really kind one locally, and I'm really grateful for it. So even in the village where I live, we have a dog cafe, and they have now got more vegan options on the menu. So whilst they're not a vegan dog cafe, they will do you a vegan breakfast, and they make vegan dog biscuits made out of peanut butter and bananas for the dogs. And we've got a chocolate shop that now do vegan hot chocolate, and I'd say probably a third of their handmade chocolates are vegan as well. And by going in and ordering them and speaking to them and talking about veganism, I feel like it's really blossoming locally. And whenever I go to some of our little independent bars and cafes and I see something new vegan on the menu, it's exciting. So it's blossoming, I would say. It is growing.
That's so great to hear, and it sort of, I guess, is testament really to the growth of veganism generally. That whether it's what you consider a relatively small town, you're not right in the heart of Liverpool, but you've got all these options. It's fantastic, and it's growing like that. It's good to have a couple of cafes as well. It's always it's lovely, isn't it, when you go to a restaurant or a cafe and you don't have to ask any questions. It's just all vegan.
Everything's vegan, and it's not like what's this got in. And I go in. I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and trying to go somewhere and her saying, "Well, can I have that? What's in that? What's in that?" To just go in and say, "Pick whatever you want." It's refreshing, and to know everybody that works there, you're all on the same page, and it's nice, isn't it, when you meet people and you know that kind of ethically and morally you're all on the same page. It's a nice feeling, isn't it? It immediately makes me feel relaxed. And I've said to a few people, obviously there's exceptions, but usually if people have made that leap and become vegan, they tend to be more conscious with their thinking. They tend to be, obviously not everyone, kind, because especially if they've done it for animals. And like for me, yes, the health benefits and everything are great, but for me it's all about animals. But I always say to people, normally if someone's vegan, they're going to be quite open-minded. They're going to be a nice person normally. So that's what I stick to anyway, because if they've made that compassionate leap, and that they've connected the dots.
I think, there's obviously always exceptions, but I think there is something in that. There's an element of if you've made a decision out of empathy for other species that aren't your own, I think you probably naturally start to think a little bit deeper about some other things within your life, and you start to question and maybe be a little bit more open and so on. So, whilst it's not always true, obviously, I think more often than not, that's been my experience anyway. I don't know if I've just been lucky, but yeah, I'm with you. You tend to have that connection point, don't you, which is always nice.
It's certainly been mine. I would say that since being vegan, I always used to think that not I didn't care about people, but I was always really passionate about animals. But I found that since I have become more open-minded and compassionate and shown more empathy towards animals, that has had a knock-on effect for for humans as well. And I am
Yeah.
much more tolerant. I'm more open-minded. So when people come to me now with things, I don't think I'm as judgmental. And I don't know whether that's being vegan or a change in my life that I would have made naturally, or getting older, but I definitely feel like I am more open-minded and I'm a more compassionate person per se for it. And it's a good feeling.
Definitely. I think going back to what you said at the beginning, and I've not heard somebody articulate it like that, but it's spot on. But that feeling of embarrassment, I think when you felt that and felt like this big seismic kind of shift in your life, that all these kind of things that the foundations of what your thinking was built upon were kind of wrong. I think that sort of does something to you insofar as like it certainly like makes you then not perhaps assert that you're right all the time, so, and that makes you more open to people, generally speaking.
It's stupid, or it sounds stupid when I say it, but literally the change in my life from when I decided to go vegan has been I feel like I'm a different person. I look back at my pre-vegan life as, I don't know, like a dream almost, because I feel like this is the person that I was meant to be. And from here on now, I would never, there is nothing, when people say, would you ever not be vegan? There is nothing that would ever change my views now on veganism. I'm so passionate about it. So literally now I've made that change. It's like, this is me. This is the person that I was supposed to be. And everything before then, I was just kind of on this journey to get here. So I feel really proud of it. And when I think like 5 years coming up vegan, I'm proud. I'm really proud.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Time's getting away, but I do want to just come back to the Veganuary point. If you were to think back, and maybe you're giving some advice to your former self, or maybe some people who are thinking about going through Veganuary now, is there any kind of things that you would definitely advise people think about, reflect upon, whether it be very specific diet things or more broader points? It'd be good to just get your perspective on that initial kind of journey.
The first thing I would say is, for me, I was all or nothing. Do your best. Don't, if you have a bad day, or you accidentally pick something up and you think this is fine to eat, and then you look on the back and like way down the ingredients list it says milk powder, and you've got no idea why milk powder's in salt and vinegar crisps. Don't be hard on yourself and think that's it. I need to stop now. Every day is a new day. So, just reset, go again the next day. Don't be hard on yourself. So that would be my first one. Prepare. Like, I really enjoyed going through recipes and finding recipes that were similar to stuff I already ate and getting the stuff in, or even picking up a few cookbooks. Like we bought loads of cookbooks at the start, and we love trying stuff from scratch. So prepare yourself. If you know that your weakness is chocolate, mine was chocolate, get a few different types of vegan chocolate in and keep them in, so you're not likely to fall off the wagon because you've got something that will like satisfy that craving. And then be proud of it. Tell people that you're doing it. So I say to people all the time, don't shy away, and don't say, don't go into a restaurant and feel awkward and say, oh, have you got a vegan menu? Just be proud of it and say, I'm trying Veganuary, and there's nothing I can see on the menu, but can you accommodate me, or can I speak to the chef? Because they always will. So yeah, don't be hard on yourself. Don't panic if you make a mistake. Be proud of doing it, and enjoy it. Enjoy trying all the new foods and things that you've not tried before, and like fall in love with cooking again, because we were in a bit of a rut with the recipes that we made and the things that we
Mm.
ate. And then all of a sudden we found this newfound love for cooking and herbs and spices and using ingredients that we'd never considered before. So be excited by it. It is exciting.
Love that. Thanks so much, Christina. It's been amazing
Thank you.
chatting with you. Before I let you go, though, it would be completely remiss of us not to tell people where to go and find the dog rescue, and to make sure that they know where to go and support you.
Oh, fabulous. I've just seen, oh my God, where's an hour gone? It's gone so quickly. So my rescue is called Little Legs Dogs. It's at Little Legs Dogs on Instagram, and it's Little Legs Dogs Rehoming on Facebook. And we've got a website, so it's www.littlelegs, little-legs.org. But if you Google us, it will come up. But adopt, don't shop. If you want a dog, reach out to your local rescue, and just, come and follow us and come and see the craziness that's in my house of my 26 dogs and, and the chaos that it is. But I'm really grateful for having me. So thank you very much for having me. And, all I would say is, like, my final parting shot about being vegan is be proud to be vegan, and, enjoy it. And thank you. Being vegan is great. It's literally an enlightenment, and it changes your life.
What better place to end it? Thank you so much, Christina.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much
show
for having
notes. No worries. I'll pop links to everything that we've talked about in the show notes, so folks can come find you. So if you are interested in supporting Christina and the work she's doing, just give the show notes a click and you'll see the links there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
This is a Bloody Vegans production.